GM, and welcome to From A to Z. Man, we're going to cover a lot today. Hopefully, it doesn't go on too long, because my studio gets hot when I go on too long. I turn off everything so that we can get it nice and quiet in here. But it gets hot, so I don't like to go on too long. Got all these lights and everything going on. All right, so obviously, if you watched any of the past content, then you would know how I feel, but I'll go over it briefly. We are definitely in fascism right now, and I'll probably get flagged just for saying that word, but you know how I feel also about censorship. I'm not dealing with it. Like, I'm just here to say what I'm gonna say. And if it gets out, it gets out. I'm not here for the algorithms. I'm not here to get insta famous. So yeah, we're dealing with fascism that is being perpetrated by the current administration. But don't get me wrong, I am fully aware of how this is a ratchet political system. It ratchets up, meaning that when the Republicans are in office, they tighten the grip. As a ratchet strap works, when you pull it, it tightens the strap, it tightens the thing. And then when you release, which is when the Democrats are in office, it releases and it goes back. But the strap doesn't loosen at all. The handle goes backwards just so that it can take a rest and take a breather, and then it ratchets up again and it tightens again. So don't act like fascism is just one party. It is both parties working together to strangle the citizens, to separate us from our resources, separate us from our labor, separate us from our wealth, and separate us from our sanity, quite honestly. All right, so yeah, like that is what's going on. So Trump part 1 was bad. People took to the streets, they protested, that was a test run. Biden didn't do anything substantive. Like, he didn't do anything to change the situation. He didn't undo anything that Trump had done. I know COVID happened. He had probably a better response than Trump might have, but still not a great response. We were over with it by the time February 2022, when Ukraine started. That's when we stopped talking about COVID and stopped dealing with COVID. And everybody just had to go back to work, because the bottom line is both wings of both parties, but they're one bird and they're flying towards Capitol. And it doesn't matter about us as human beings. They're squishing us. This isn't actually where I plan to start, but I guess, in the climate we're in, and I guess to put some context to why I'm coming at all this the way I am. So the number one main concern, though, this shouldn't be political, but of course it is the climate crisis. It doesn't matter what you believe. Let's just say, for instance, that the climate crisis is a natural occurrence. It's not. We're doing it. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's a natural occurrence, because, if it were a natural occurrence, we would still have to deal with this politically. We would still have to talk about it and deal with it. So if it was a natural occurrence, we still need to think about how to help the most people. We still need to think about, immigration is to prevent people from escaping climate doom. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it's definitely a big reason. And, it's been, to prevent people from leaving the countries that the United States has been destroying. So, the countries that are most highly targeted by ICE are the countries that the CIA had every hand in destroying. And those people, those citizens are coming here because we stole all their resources. They need to go where the resources are. So, climate crisis is our number one concern because it is, if we don't have a planet to live on, if we don't have enough resources, enough drinkable water, enough energy, enough food, then we die. And so all other problems are south of that. Um, Not a whole lot I can say on that specifically, except that, we need to be cooperating in order to defeat that. And so any political movement that is calling for individualism and segregation and separation of nations and people within those nations is a political movement that is advocating for death, because we're not going to get through this without working together. We have a global market that we've created. Globalism, neoliberalism has created this globalism, and there is no world in which pulling back all of our resources and no longer working together is the play. Because no country can do it by themselves anymore. Nobody manufactures everything 100%, and we're not going to get there anytime soon. And we really shouldn't be, even if that's something that we should be thinking about, is getting each country to be more independent. We don't need to think about doing it for the sake of individualism and nationalism and like isolationism. We need to be doing it because if each different country, state, province, whatever, if everything is kind of independently strong, then we're all strong together. We shouldn't be being independently strong to be isolated. So the next, the two things that I see as falling equal, and I know a lot of people right off the bat, this is the political, the current political left and right in the United States, or whatever. It is the current political argument under capitalism. Our two biggest problems that are about the same it's because they're a braid, they're heavily intertwined, are the distribution of wealth and resources and social issues, because the distribution of wealth and resources is a social issue. Just like I was saying with the nationalism and the immigration, like the whole point in separating us and them is so that we can say they don't deserve our resources. And that's what it all comes down to. So every form of race, gender, creed, sexual orientation, nationality, etc., any kind of prejudice, any kind of like othering of any group of people comes down to wanting to be able to separate them from the market. The market, resources being food, housing, etc., but money and access to good jobs is a proxy for those things under our current regime and the way we currently do things. So our day-to-day of what we talk about is our like living wage that we don't have, healthcare. These are the types of things that would make it a more equitable bargain for us to live under neoliberal globalist capitalism. But currently we don't get any of those things, and we pay for everything, and the services that we do receive are subpar. And that is even for the privileged classes, even for, the white men and the white women and any other, classes that you might see as more privileged than others. We're all being debased by the money and the entire system that treats, the entire dollars per hour model is a form of slavery. And the fact that so much of our the losses of industry are socialized. So they're intertwined. The reason we have social issues is because if we can call you an other, if we can say you're different, then we can come up with reasons to say you don't deserve access to food, water, money, etc. That's really what it comes down to. So, when people try to separate these two political things, even the individuals themselves, meaning like, conservatives would view themselves as people who are more worried about money and finance and the stock market, and liberals and further left would view themselves as people who are more concerned with identity and how people are treated and things like that. And I think that they're the same issue. The reason people are treated poorly is to separate you from resources. If you had resources, you wouldn't be as concerned about your identity, because then your identity wouldn't be tied to your ability to make money and eat and etc. So they are together. They're one thing. So I'm leading up to something here. So the climate crisis is very important. The distribution of wealth and the identity politics and how we decide who is worthy and not worthy of protection by the law and access to resources and wealth, etc. So I don't really have a lot of answers when it comes to what we're going to do about fascism, because I don't know that we can at this point. I think that it's too far gone, and I don't know. I mean, for one, people on the left want to believe that we're going to have some kind of either violent revolution, like people are going to rise up when things get bad enough, or and I guess a lot of people on the right maybe think that too. I don't know, probably not really, because people on the right are joining ICE. They are the Gestapo. That's the sad thing about this country, is like, we are, it's not un-American to be hateful and rounding up people and killing them and throwing them in camps. Matter of fact, it is 100% in the American history to be doing stuff like this, and the people who are doing it are the flag-waving, blue-blooded Americans. Like, these are the people who, look back at every violent criminal thing the U.S. has ever done around the world and says, yeah, let's do that at home. So that's the sad part of it. But on the left, like, we dream of violent revolution or whatever. That's why, like, Luigi and Rodney Henton and, like, these different acts of, like, rebellion against the state. These acts of the protests, or the music festivals as they're calling them on TikTok. But, like, I just don't think that, I mean, I don't know that a violent revolution will do anything. The United States is so big that I don't think you can change the course of the ship without breaking the ship into 1,000 tiny islands. And most of those islands will be scary Christian version of Sharia law. Like, if the United States were to break into different sects, you would be afraid to travel through most of the states at that point. Like, the United States would become, the violent fantasy that people dream that the Middle East is. Like, you would be afraid to drive, you'd be afraid to drive through different states depending on your identity. So I think, unfortunately, I see, fascism evolving into techno-feudalism. And so, the weird thing is, watching, so, okay, my two, they're not my only sources of information, but I guess you would say my two favorite sources of information are leftist TikTok and leftist TikTok and crypto podcasts, like investor type podcasts. Mostly the Bankless podcast, because those guys have good content. But I'll watch some other stuff too. And when you listen to investors talk in this same climate, like side by side, going from one app to the other, going from TikTok to YouTube, the information, or even, just even on TikTok, because I still see, investment stuff, market stuff, and crypto stuff a lot on TikTok. So even in the short form world, like the divide in thought between, the people who are like, we live under fascism, we have to do something about this, and the people who are talking about crypto and the markets and these things, it's a world of difference. It, like, one side is saying that the country is about to fall apart, and the other side is like reveling in the glory of like what's going on. Like, the markets aren't doing as bad. Like, people keep trying to be like, oh, Trump is ruining the economy. I don't see that. Like, I mean, I do see it at the pump. I do see it at the gas station. I do see it at the grocery store. Like, I understand like the damage he's doing as far as tariffs. I'm not one of those people that's trying to defend Trump or say that it's not happening. But if you're an investor, you're making money. So, that is one of the reasons early on in this thing I said you need to be protecting yourself, because I understand that people are being priced out of assets and chased out. And one of my favorite crypto, or not crypto because he hates crypto, one of my favorite guys that I listen to, another investor guy, is Gary Stevenson. And that he is talking about how the middle class and the lower classes are being priced out of everything. And that is exactly the point. And the only way that you can keep any future ahead of you is to be like doing what you can to hold on to assets, not dollars. Assets. You need to get something. And I know this is like poor people in Venezuela who are like, their dollar is going down, 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 down. It's like they are hedging themselves with Bitcoin, because their value will go up if they own Bitcoin instead of their own, what is it, the Bolivar? I don't know. Probably gonna look like an idiot. Doesn't matter. My point is, like, we're not feeling it yet in the United States. No matter how hard we're saying we're feeling it, we're not feeling it enough where you're saying, oh, I better like store my wealth in groceries. I better put all of my money into groceries on Friday, because by Tuesday the dollar will be worth a lot less. You're not really thinking that way, Yes, you're probably looking for deals if you're smart, but anyway, I'm not going to get into a long preach about this. The point I was getting to is that I think what's going to happen is we are going to slide slowly, surely into fascism. Like, electing a Democrat is not going to pause the fascism. It might put a pause on it, but we're going to keep going that direction the same way we've been going that direction since George Bush. Like, it has been going that direction. Like, the NSA and all that stuff, Snowden, it's all related, and including the 2008 crash and the markets. All of this stuff is related. And I think we could see the country fall apart politically, but the economy never stop. I don't think the dollar ever loses value, and I don't think the stock market loses its value. I think that and I know this sounds crazy, because everybody thinks that revolutions and countries ending always means like this death of the economy and the death of the way of life. And so I don't think it's totally true. And there's really only one historical example of this being true, and that is the Velvet Revolution of Czechoslovakia in 1989. Basically, that country was a communist country, got overthrown by a revolution to become a democratic country. You know, obviously there's speculation there as to how much involvement, international or U.S. involvement was there. But point being, the stock market survived and the money survived, and it just kept going. Now, I understand we're a very different size country and we have a very different thing going on. We have a much, more violent thing going on. Meaning that they had a lot of peaceful protests, and I think our protests are mostly peaceful at this point. I think that the portrayal of violence in the protests is mostly false. The traditional media wants to make it look like the protesters are violence, but it is in fact the cops that incite the violence. It is not the protesters. So I think we could have a situation where the dollar survives and the stock market survives. And obviously, things like crypto are going to do fine. Any stock that's international is going to do fine. Even if it's majority based in the United States, it's still really going to do fine, because I don't think that the country falling into fascism hurts Apple. It doesn't hurt Microsoft. Matter of fact, that is the leftist case for why this country will embrace fascism, is because fascism is essentially the ultimate end of capitalism. When capitalism can't just control people through consumer goods anymore, and they actually start to get violent and take to the streets and want healthcare and a better way of life, and they start to realize how bad they're being ripped off, the government pointing guns at them is the answer to get it all back. And of course, like picking on demographics, separating people into numbers, getting people to rat out their neighbors or turn against their neighbors, offering, like the ICE budget has been, 100x. It's the largest police budget in the entire world. We've got Trump now nationalizing local police in different places. And I think there's 18 different states that are going to be, they already did it in Washington, D.C., where he nationalized the MPD and a bunch of other local agencies. And now they're saying it's going to happen in other places, and Louisiana's one of those places. Which I'm in New Orleans. So, like, that is, like, I'm going to see this in the streets. If it's going to happen, I'm going to see it. I work downtown, so there's no way to avoid it. We'll see how it goes. But I think that's the reality is, like, and yeah, like in the very beginning of the year, as an investor, I'm a person, I hold stocks and I hold some crypto. And at the beginning of the year, when Trump first got into office, there was blood in the streets. It was just everything went down only as soon as he got in office. And it was part of the plan. It always was. Like, he tanks the market. He does things that shakes up the market, and it gives people who have money access to buy in at lower prices. It's a way of, manipulating the market, so to speak. And I know that a lot of people hate crypto already. They hated crypto because the Democrats were very anti-crypto. But the Democrats are anti-crypto because they want to keep you out of it. They don't want you getting smart and using money that is outside of their ability to manipulate. They don't want you getting into crypto, because the reality is, when you get into crypto, you start to learn more about how money works and what money is. If you get into the depth of the philosophical implications of this technology, it's not just gambling. There is a there. And if you actually give it a chance, like if you actually think about economics in any I understand the hatred for economics for not taking care of people. But I do think that economics used correctly is ultimately what we will use to take care of people. I don't want to see a world in which authoritarian governments are the only source of food. I want to see a world in which our government is run by an honest form of money in which everyone has access and equal access and the ability to make their life better using this human coordination technology, which is money. Because eventually we get to a moneyless society. That would be the dream. But in between steps, where we're learning to get to the moneyless part, we need to have increments here. So kind of lost myself a little here. Going back a second, so Trump intentionally tanks the market and people get in. And that's where I was going with this, because so a lot of people hate crypto and Democrats hated crypto. They're talking you out of it. Trump being pro crypto and doing all these things for crypto does not make it a scam. It does not make it a criminal organization. He's doing it because he can use this thing. It is permissionless, and he's able to use this thing to make money. And because crypto was treated so poorly by the Democrats for the last 4 years and been treated as, I've talked about this before, but Gary Gensler and other Democrats were cozied up with Sam Bankman-Fried, who was one of the biggest scammers who caused the entire 21-22 crypto and market crash. It was all on him. And then Elizabeth Warren and a bunch of other Democrats turned around and turned on crypto after that because they were in bed with a scammer. And then they turned on Coinbase and they turned on, Kraken and Uniswap and a bunch of really legitimate companies because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar working to make regulations with a scammer. And because of all of the people in crypto who were burned by Democrats and were willing to turn to Donald Trump or anybody to make their bags grow, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not trying to defend people voting poorly just to make more money. I'm not defending it at all. But it is the reality that the people who were affected by the attack on a legitimate industry by the Democrats turn to this charlatan, and that charlatan has promised them everything. And because he's able to make a bunch of money here, he is also doing as much as possible to push forth regulations. And a lot of these things were going to come anyway. But he is pushing it harder and harder because he's making a lot of money while he's doing it. That doesn't mean that the industry is evil. I don't believe good actors like Uniswap or Coinbase or even Vitalik Buterin, one of my favorite people in the crypto space. He's the creator of Ethereum. He's not running an investment firm, so to speak, and he's not a financial person. He actually wishes that people would use Ethereum and crypto and cryptography and blockchain technology for better things, like prediction markets like Polymarket and quadratic voting and quadratic funding. And there's all kinds of technological uses outside of finance. But right now, the big innovation is decentralized finance, and how decentralized finance sets anyone, an individual or an organization, free from the traditional banking system and allows you to do business in an international way without being held back by fees and middlemen and every other form of unnecessary regulation for free-flowing money, energy, data. It's just that simple. Anyway, I know I'm going all over the place, but that's, this is what goes through my mind. This is how it's been. I'm not, I haven't done an episode in a while, and I'm not trying to be all Charlie with the red string over here, but it is all related. And maybe I will have to break this up, but we'll see. So, I think that, like I said, the dollar will survive. There's too many dollars in treasuries across the world. I think that the government will change. It doesn't mean that it will be destroyed, but what we know of as the type of government we had might be destroyed, and it might be totally different after this. And there's almost probably nothing we can do about it because we're addicted to consumerism. We're addicted to the energy usage. And that does bring me to I guess I have two different ways I can go with this. I guess okay, I'll do the short one and then I'll do the long one. So the shorter one is that I see a lot of people talking about like when this is all over with ICE and everything, the Nuremberg trials, there's going to be, they're going to have to pay for this. I don't think so. Because the Nuremberg trials happened to a smaller country by a larger country and conglomeration of countries under the United Nations. So Germany had no defense. The Nuremberg trials were going to happen. Who's going to do that to the United States? The only person who could possibly do it to the United States is the United States. So, but we know Democrats have no interest in holding anyone accountable because if they were going to hold anyone accountable, they would have done it after January 6th. The fact that they allowed Trump a chance to get back into office shows you that they're all on the same team. And I said that at the time. When Biden won, I said, okay, now let's watch him forgive everything. Let's watch him act like none of it ever happened. And it really pissed me off because, when Trump got into office the first time and the way people actually got ignited before Trump and, with Bernie and stuff like that, the way I actually saw people getting ignited in 2015, I thought that we as a country were on to something. I thought we were going to take the energy that Obama had given to the movement, and even though it was false, even though he was a war criminal just like every other president, like he gave us that idea that we were on a path towards change. And then like what the DNC did to Bernie and, Trump getting into office and everybody just fueled up, and it's just like, all right, like y'all see it now, right? Everybody's on this page. We're all going to move further and further left. Like everybody went from being a Democrat to being a liberal, and then like from being a liberal to moving further and further left. Like let's talk about socialism. And then now we're ready to talk about communism and Marxism, and it kept getting redder and redder, and like, it's kind of funny I say redder because Marxism, communism, whatever. But we just kept going further and further left because I thought people were starting to realize like, hey, the Democrats aren't the good guys either. And that's where I've been my whole life. Like I've always been like, look, man, like I understand how football works. You got a red team, you got a blue team, and they both work for the same organization. They're not actually against each other. Both football teams work for the NFL. They get their checks written by the same organization. End of story. This is stupid. Like to pretend that we're actually like voting for something other than like flavor of the week. Like they are both working towards the same goal. It's just a matter of, is the strap being tightened or are we gearing up to pull it tight again? And when we give these little concessions like, like gay marriage and DACA and just any type of concessions where you're like, oh, well, the Democrats do good things for people. I really honestly think that the Democrats do good things so that you can put your name on a list. Now the Democrats, when they get back the Republicans, when they get back in office, they have your name and address. They know who to go after. Like, of course, like that it's good cop, bad cop. And I hate that people don't see that, but I thought people were going to see it. And then they voted Biden in and went to brunch. Everybody went to brunch for 4 years. And the only people who like actually like the people who actually politically gave a shit and the people who actually learned something moved further left. And they got mad about Ukraine. They got mad about Israel and Palestine. They got mad about things being just business as usual under Biden, and then no Trump arrests. Nothing happened. Who cares? 34 felony convictions still made him the president. And then a bunch of blue MAGA, all y'all want to talk about is, oh, well, bunch of racists and misogynists and leftists lost the election because, we would all be at brunch right now if Kamala had won. And y'all don't get it. You don't get it that the reason Kamala didn't win is because a lot of us do get it. And we understand that it's not actually harm reduction. What you're calling harm reduction is just the part of the ratchet where they're not harming us. They're giving us little concessions so that they can harm us later. You act like the system is not designed to kill us all. If you are not in the 1%, you are in the working class. That's it. And that's the bottom line. Like, even millionaires, even a person with $100 million is still working class compared to Jeff Bezos. So it just really gets me that, like, a lot of people on the left will look at a person with $1 million and see an enemy. And a person with $1 million is still struggling. I understand they're not struggling like a person with $0 or a homeless person or even a person that only gets $50K, $60K, $70K a year. I get it. I'm not trying to say the $1 million person has an easy life. I'm saying that the $1 million person is still working class. They're still going to work. $1 million doesn't retire you, period. Like, not for the rest of your life. It might get you a little vacation. You could maybe you could stop working 10 years. I don't know. You're not going to get long, You're going to have to work to make that million into 10 million to get any break. And then from there, you still got to get that 10 million to 100 million. This is the game of capitalism. And that's why it's a game. So when you are a person with $1 million in assets, not even in the bank. We're talking about, like, your home is worth 500,000, and then, maybe you got a 401k and your wife has a 401k and, like, you got 2 cars and whatever. You add up all your stuff and maybe you've got $1 million. Yes, if you are that person and you identify more with Jeff Bezos because you earned all your things, then you are a class traitor and you are brainwashed by the system because you are 3 months away from the streets. You are not 3 months away from being Jeff Bezos. You are not 3 months away from being Mark Zuckerberg. You are not one good idea away from being Elon Musk. It's just not true. So you're a class traitor when you look down at people who have less than $1 million in assets and think that they're not as good as you, that you're somehow better than them. You may have worked hard, but a lot of it is luck. Period. Because luck, what is it? Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So when people say you're lucky, they're not necessarily missing that point. At least I'm not. Like, I understand you were prepared, you worked hard, and then you got opportunities. When the preparation and the opportunity met, you got lucky. You were there. You did your part to do that. It's still luck because you were in that room. You were in that space. You met that person. You got that chance. It's still luck. Unless you believe in fate, and then it was always going to happen, in which case your hard work still doesn't matter because it was always going to happen. You were always going to do the hard work. There was no choice in the matter. So, like, no matter which way you turn it, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, you need to look at everything as with gratitude. And that's really how everybody should be living anyway. But Yeah. So if you think I worked hard for everything I have, you don't have a sense of gratitude, because you should understand that working hard was part of it. That was part of the luck. The hard work goes into the luck. So no one's coming to rescue us. And another example of why that's not going to happen, not just because we're a huge country and nobody's going to be able to. Nobody's going to have Nuremberg trials because the Democrats ain't going to do it. Because we didn't do it the first time with the Civil War. The Confederates were not only not properly punished, but a lot of them went on to become U.S. presidents. So you could argue that the entire problem we're having right now is because we did not kill the treasonous traitors that tried to destroy our country the first time. And now here they are again, trying to destroy our country along racial lines again. So, yeah, like, unless the political regime that decides to take over makes sure that heads roll, then we'll probably see this all over again. And that's if that's if the good guys win, so to speak. Because the way it's looking is we're going to get techno-feudalism. And so that brings me on to what might be getting close to my final points. I don't like the energy consumption moralism. What I mean by that is definitely, more for my own benefit, I guess you would say. I'm defending crypto. To some degree, I'm defending AI, even though I have a lot of problems with AI. Like, I know I've been very defensive of AI in the past, but I do agree that there's a lot of problematic things. I don't like generative AI completely, and it's not just because of this is a weird one, because I don't like the parts of generative AI I don't like are not necessarily because they stole from a bunch of artists and whatever. That is a valid argument, the theft, but also like every artist sees things and absorbs things and takes those things and remixes them. And I think that for me, I don't like the whole like petite bourgeois idea of like intellectual property. You know what I mean? Because very much artists thinking about intellectual property and originality and this is me and mine and this thing is you thinking one day you'll be famous. It is you thinking one day you'll be rich. You are putting a weight on your intellectual property that is not just the weight of like, oh, I created this and I don't want people biting my style. It is the weight of like, I won't be able to eat if people steal from me. And to me, like, that is an argument that goes away in a moneyless society. So I'm already like just looking past that. And it's not just because I'm defending AI, but it's because as a musician, you've already devalued me with Spotify. And I've talked about this before, but like streaming has killed music. Easy to produce pop music and electronic, EDM and hip hop and anything that you can basically do on a laptop has also killed live music in a sense, because like there's no difference between going to see an artist and going to listen to an iPod. Like there's not much of a difference now, except maybe a light show. So like the music industry has already been killed by technology, in my opinion, as a person who has a guitar on the wall and, plays physical drums and records with microphones. Like, it's already dead. So the fact that, like, visual artists are now upset because anybody can just, like, conjure up an image immediately, that's the inevitability of the system we're creating. That's what you did with Spotify. When you just go to a playlist on Spotify and expect magic music to appear for you, and those artists get paid, fractions of a penny for every spin, and you never look at their name and you don't care who they are and you don't go to their shows and you don't support anything, it already happened to the rest of us. And it was happening to film. It was, by not having theatrical releases or having things go to streaming, like actors and directors aren't getting the same royalties they were getting under the old system. It's all dying. So I'm not going to be like, oh, AI, this and that, because like this was the natural way it was going. And I'm not saying that to defend it all. I'm saying that like if you weren't hemming and hawing for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years as it went this direct, like people were saying this when it went to VHS and when it went to DVD. And like, but the reality is that Napster and streaming services and Apple really put the nail in the coffin of the entertainment industry. And the ready-made consumerist idea that I want everything now. I need to be able to stream music, stream movies. I want, movies that are in the theater have to come out on streaming services weeks later. Like, the instant gratification means that we were going to end up with AI. And so, like, I'm not stuck at that point where a lot of people are. Bringing that back to the point of energy consumption moralism. So AI is bad for the environment. Crypto is bad for the environment. Social media is also bad for the environment. Google in general is bad for the environment. Actually, all of these things are the same type of bad. So when you think about why AI and crypto is bad, it's the exact same reason that social media and, Google and streaming services, it's all the same effect on the thing. And so when you're trying to say like, this energy consumption is okay, but this energy consumption is not okay, you're moralizing. You're saying that some types of consumption are okay. And the reason I'm saying we can't do that is because that is exactly the social order we're having in the real world right now. We're saying what types of behaviors allow people access to resources. And so it's the same thing with the energy that we put into our tech. We're saying, oh, some types of tech make you a bad person to use these things. And you don't even understand what people are using them for. You just automatically have formed value judgments. And now, and I'm going back to like, this doesn't really matter. But yes, if you want to hate AI for different reasons, I get it. With crypto, I think most people, like, the reason I say I get it is because AI is dangerous and centralizing technology. There's definitely, under its current regime, it is very dangerous, and I do think there's a lot to be worried about. But I don't think that the energy moralizing should be part of that caution. I think there's a lot bigger conversations to be having other than that. Not because it's not important, but because in that particular, like, energy consumption belongs in its own bubble. And so just talking about AI and energy consumption is like a microcosm of a huge thing. With crypto, though, I totally have to disagree. Like, if you don't want to use Bitcoin because of its footprint, that's fine. But you can use Ethereum. It is proof of stake. It is like 99.9% less carbon footprint than Bitcoin, and you could just use that one crypto thing and be totally 100% clean. So the moralizing over energy consumption with crypto is purely because you don't understand crypto, and you don't want to understand crypto because you think that it's for gambling and you think it's for finance bros, instead of understanding that crypto, Ethereum and Bitcoin are the future of finance. And it is like, decentralized finance is the most important thing for marginalized groups. The ability to hold on to assets in a place that are not attached to a bank that can turn you off. Like, that is the reality. Is like, if you're with a bank, you have a credit score, you got, there is a million reasons why they won't give you money. Whereas if you are able to save under decentralized finance, you can do things there that the real world might give you problems with. And that alone makes it amazing for any marginalized group, period. Especially, yes, for the Western world, it's great. But especially for countries where, like, you're literally falling apart, which the United States is. But for any country where you're concerned about your assets being taken, like if you are an immigrant in the United States and you're worried ICE is going to come get you, having your assets be on chain, having those 12 words memorized, having those 12 words be with someone in your family that you trust, or a lockbox, or something, that you'll be able to get back to. You're not going to have your funds seized by the police or ICE or the FBI or whoever three-letter agency that wants to steal from you. So the energy consumption moralism is not the play. Like, we do not have time to fight over which types of energy usage are okay. Because the reality is, like, the ones that you're most angry about, AI and crypto, are not even the biggest polluters in the world. The beef industry is one of the biggest polluters in the world. The marijuana industry is one of the biggest land and water usage problems in the world. Like, when you talk about the world, like airlines, like, there are so many things that do so much worse, and just moralizing and saying, oh, well, this industry, we need this and we need that. And basically it's the idea that, like, oh, well, social media is okay and streaming is okay, basically because they came first. Had it come the other way around, and had we had crypto and banking rails done on blockchain before we had social media, then we would turn around and say, well, we can't have social media because we have our entire banking industry, which, by the way, if you want to just talk about the TradFi, the banking industry, like, that is a much larger polluter than crypto. Like, if you think about every bank in the entire United States that has all of their lights on, the ATM 24/7, multiple ATMs, like, the energy consumption argument is just like moralizing. And moralizing is not going to win us any fights, political or otherwise. So I think it's stupid. And you know what? I'm not going to get totally deep into AI. I think I'm actually going to cut it here now because we've covered a lot, and I think maybe I'll do another episode sooner to really start to get more into, I explained my point about crypto and why I think it's important. I explained why I think AI is something that's dangerous, but we shouldn't be judging people for using it over the energy consumption stuff. I think I need to get deeper just into AI. Got a lot of opinions about that, but I think that this has gone on long enough. And and I just don't want to hold you hostage. And I've got so much more to say. So, and it's getting hot in here, man. I told you. So I really appreciate you being here with me.